So get wisdom is biblical. And whatever you do, this version says get insights. Now, a scholar named Robert Alter, who was citing another scholar named Michael Fox, explains that, and this was his opinion, he said get wisdom means one must acquire wisdom, even if at first it may seem like it's by rote, with true comprehension drawing later. It's possible that people just, especially children, would just say these proverbs by rote. But the meaning has to be there. So my advice is this: if you can memorize a proverb, that's great. But good memory alone without understanding is not so helpful. How many of you have seen Kathy Smedley here give a presentation? I know who she is. Well, she's one that has an excellent memory, but she understands what she's doing. So she's integrated so much that she can dramatically enact it and be in here and be in the persona of the person she's dramatizing in the Bible. But for us, if you can memorize, I encourage it. But if you can't, don't worry about it. What we want to do is we need to pray for understanding. And I gave you this little ask, seek, and knock recommendation, that you ask God for wisdom, you seek for it, you're sort of knocking, and then you can sense God's response at times. So then there was a question put forward by a scholar named Ernst Lucas, and he said, what does the word wisdom mean today? And how is it related to such things as knowledge, intelligence, and experience? So in short, I'm asking you to just think of the word wisdom in our culture, not biblical. Just when you hear the word wisdom, what comes to your mind? Yes.
Common sense.
Common sense, yeah, kind of knowing what's what. What else can be wisdom in our culture? Yes.
Discernment.
Discernment, yeah. Discerning things. Another idea.
Making good decisions. Making good decisions.
Making good decisions, yes.
Deep insight. Deep insight.
Deep insight, yes. So this is all what we think of when we think of wisdom.
Well, that's deep.
That's very deep. Ernie.
I'd say seeking reconciliation.
Seeking reconciliation is wisdom. And we're going to see in Proverbs that wisdom applies to many domains of life. So about wisdom, just in general. Wisdom is very deep, and it lies with God. And there's a passage in Job 28, and it's talking about, and the title of it in my Bible, they give these little titles, where can wisdom be found? And first, it just describes miners going into the depths of the earth, trying to find precious metals. And then it says, but where shall wisdom be found? And where is the place of understandings? Mortals do not know it. They don't know the way to it. And it is not found in the land of the living. The deep says it's not in me. And the sea says it is not with me. And it cannot be gotten for gold. And silver cannot be weighed out as a price. And it's extremely valuable. And then it comes down to verse 20 and repeats the question. Where then does wisdom come from? And where is the place of understanding? And then it goes on down here to verse 23. God understands the way to it, and God knows its place. And God looks to the ends of the earth and sees everything under the heavens. When he gave the wind its weight and apportioned out the waters by measure, and when he made a decree for the rain and a way for the thunderbolts, then he saw and declared it. God established it and searched it out. And God said to humankind, truly, the fear of the Lord, which for right now, we're just going to think about the awe and reverence of the Lord. We'll get into this term, fear of the Lord, at the end closer to the end of this presentation. But truly the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom, and to depart from evil is understanding. So
Heavy stuff.
it's deep. But the word for wisdom in Proverbs, we're going to focus on Proverbs. But in Proverbs, Job, and Ecclesiastes, the Hebrew word for wisdom is this word kokma. The first sound has the CH that you hear in Bach, and you kind of throw it in the back of your throat. So go kokma. Go ahead, everybody.
Kokma.
Very good. And so it has a range of meaning, but in Proverbs, life skill is emphasized. And that's what some of you were saying when you were thinking about wisdom. And this is the ability of an individual to conduct one's life in the best possible way and to the best possible effect. Now here, a scholar named Ernst Lucas was citing an older writer named Library. But it's the idea of conducting our lives to the best possible way and the best possible effect. So in the wisdom literature, this word with wisdom, you'll often find it coupled with other words like understanding or knowledge or insight. And this suggests that wisdom has an intellectual quality. Our minds are involved. And it can lead to happiness and success in life. But a big concept in the book of Proverbs is wisdom. And there's three major aspects of wisdom in Proverbs. The first aspect, sapiential, which this author is saying is a way of knowing reality. Now, I went and looked at my dictionary definition of sapiential, and the dictionary definition online was that sapiential is related to wisdom. That's what it means. It's an adjective. Circular, right? Yeah, I see you're already doing this. And I went into that. But what this author is saying is we are knowing what? Knowing wisdom about reality. So it's also ethical. Wisdom is a way of conducting oneself. And it's religious. It's a way of relating to the divinely designed order or to God. So here's my question. Do you think these domains, knowing reality, conducting oneself, and recognizing God in what has been made, do you think that these domains of wisdom are given much attention in our culture? Is our culture today concerned about relating to life in a religious way, ethically, or even asking what reality is? Your ideas, your thoughts. Yes.
I don't think, in a religious way, I don't think that that's prominent. I think there are some things with ethics and stuff, especially if you're looking at politics.
And I would say those of us in here, we have a vested interest in the religious aspect of life, but not everybody does. Yes. Were you having a question, or I was going to say, Michael, maybe you did. Anything else?
I think it depends on the individual, on what your background is and how you can relate to those three categories and how
Yes.
much you embrace them in your own life. So.
I noticed my parents, they were really ethical people. And then later in life, I thought, are there other ways? And so at the end of the day, their ethic deeply influenced me. I used to smoke cigarettes from age 19 to 23, 4 years. I'm very repentant of that because it's not great for oneself. But other people have trouble, they still have a smoking problem. And I don't want to disparage anyone who is a smoker. I'm just trying to say that it wasn't good for me. So here's what's happening. My mother felt guilty because in the 50s, they would send me to the little drugstore, to Joe Amato's, and I'd buy their cigarettes for them. But in the 50s, when they heard about the cigarette situation, they stopped. And so she thinks that she influenced me to smoke cigarettes. And the answer is no, Mom. I was in my freshman year of college and I wanted to stay up all night. So what do? You drink coffee and cigarettes. And the next thing I knew, I was addicted. Took me 4 years of that. So ethical is a way of conducting oneself, and the mind's involved with that. So the three major areas that we're talking about today are knowledge. You have to have some knowledge to have wisdom, living, about our living, and understanding. So to review, sapiential is a way of knowing reality, ethical is a way of conducting oneself, and religious is a way of relating to the divinely designed order or to God. Yes, Ernie?
I'm shocked about knowing reality when in the society around us now, there's so much focus on fantasy, whether it's in games and movies, everything. People really are choosing to live in a world of fantasy rather than reality.
Fantasy is becoming much more valued. Yes, and there's.
Or at least it's an escape from reality. I'm not, that's my judgment.
Yes,
but,
and also too, kind of like sometimes a hyper real culture.
Yeah,
And then I don't know much about it, but there's even ways that our technology now and our computer technology makes things more and more virtual.
It's addictive.
Yes, it is.
No question.
Paul's got a question.
Yes.
There, Paul.
Oh, we have a question here. Yes.
Yeah, I think we still live by these. The problem is that one person's reality is not necessarily another person's reality. One person's ethical behavior is not necessarily another person's ethical behavior. So I think we live by these, but by our own definitions.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I think that in our culture, the individual definition of what one thinks is oneself is predominant.
Oh, gosh, yes.
But in other cultures, like in Eastern cultures, what we have is where the group's more important. What is the group thinking? I was sharing with, your point's well taken. You know, the individual's assessment of oneself is very important. I'm not disparaging that, but I think that there's a balance between the two. And one theologian was saying that the Bible itself values the community and it values the individual. And so like in God's eyes, the individuals are highly valued, as is the community. These are wonderful insights from people. But there's contrasts in the book of Proverbs. One contrast is obvious, wisdom and folly. We'll be talking about that. And then they mention something called the way of the righteous and the way of sinners. But I wanted to share with you some contrasts in the domains of speech. There's burst of anger and speaking rationally, but then there's gentleness and weighing our words. And then there's Proverbs about speaking the right word and the timely word. And the opposite of that is just blurting out our thoughts. So then there's specific contrasts such as diligence and sloth. And it says that sluggards, that's the slothful sluggard, we say lazy, but sluggards live in a world of illusion, which is something to really think about. So then there's honesty and dishonesty and self-control and gluttony. And sometimes people are somewhere on the continuum here. And then they talk about drunkenness, and there's contentment, and then there's constant coveting. Oh, if I only had this or that. And the book of Proverbs talks about sexual control, but it also talks about indiscriminate, unchecked behavior. So there's a whole realm of contrast. So a comment from a scholar named Lucas is the book of Proverbs contains a number of what he called pen portraits, and I like that, of different types of characters. And for many of these, their character includes how they use words. Some of the examples from Lucas are the liar, or the whisperer, or the gossip, or the flatterer, or the scoffer. And as I said before, sometimes you could just kind of sense there's a person's personality, but there's kind of like, almost it feels like a spirit from the person, constantly with. And there are proverbs about how the righteous and the wicked use words. That's all over Proverbs. So I'm going to share a bunch of them. The mouth of the righteous is a fountain of life, but the mouth of the wicked conceals violence. That's what you call synonymous, antithetical, or it's antithetical. It's got the but. It's opposite ideas. The mouth of the righteous is a fountain of life, but the mouth of the wicked conceals violence. The lips of the righteous know what is acceptable, but the mouth of the wicked is perverse. Then we have moron speech. When words are many, transgression is not lacking. But the prudent are restrained in speech. This one's really intense. Rash words are like sword thrusts, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. If one gives an answer, this is Proverbs 18:13. If one gives an answer before hearing, it is folly and shame.
That's right.
And a word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in settings of silver. And there was a woman talking to me about something she was concerned about. Bear with me, this was at a luncheon party. and she said she has a tendency to say too much, and she wanted to say just the right thing. And I gave her this proverb, and she acted like, "Oh, you're so wise." To make an apt answer is joy to anyone, and a word in season, how good it is. So not only our speech, but to what extent we're speaking. Now, the opposite of wisdom is folly. And so Estes points out that he said that folly is not just ignorance, it's perversity and impiety. So the book of Proverbs wants people to understand what? Reality. Proverbs examines the whole range of life in which wisdom and folly are expressed in attitudes and values. So I wrote this. Wisdom is born out of our attitudes and our values. It's born out, you can see. And folly can be presented as an attitude, or it can be presented as a value. But we need discernment. So we need to try to grasp the range of life and to have discernment about what is genuine wisdom and what is absolute folly. But grasping this range of life is sapiential. It is a knowledge of reality. Now, as I go on with this, it's going to be more clear, I hope, very much so. There's types of fools in the book of Proverbs. They break it down. The first type of fool is the simple. And these are people who are naive. They are gullible, and they're easily led astray. This Hebrew word for the simple fool is peti, and it means the person's mind is open, spacious, wide, just anything can come in. And this person's mind is wide open. And I'm not talking about having an open mind. I'm talking about, because sometimes we can have an open mind about, like something's going on, I want to have an open mind about this situation and keep hearing more. That's one thing. But I'm talking about just anything comes in. And so because the simple one has an open mind, because they have an open mind, They can receive, this is what Proverbs is saying, they can receive instruction from wise one. Petty is often the condition of young people. Young people do not say they are foolish, but they do acknowledge bondage. Now, I thought of two rock and roll classics, but I'm going to ask you about your music. One was an early one called The Chains of Love. And the words were, this is bondage, chains. My baby's got me locked up in chains, and they ain't the kind that you can see. Yeah. Oh, they are saying they're chained. Or another one that came after that was Aretha Franklin. She was a Black artist. I can't even begin to capture her intonation pattern because she would say change and just extend it far and go to the end of this room and go out into the street. And she'd say one word and just draw it out. But she said, if she would, the refrain was chain, chain, chains, chain of fools. And she said, I'm just a link in your chain. She recognized that she was just a link in a chain of people that were fools. Do you know a song from back when where we use, where it has the word fool in it? Fools in Love. Okay. And another one, but
My foolish heart.
My foolish heart. See, so they say that they've been foolish, or they confess that they're in chains or some sort of bondage. It's got a great beat, but this is what they're saying. So then you have the obstinate fool. This is a little bit more hardened. And the Hebrew word for the obstinate fool is kesil. And this word, kesil, literally means confident. So this person speaks confidently, but this person is thick-headed, dull-witted, dense, and morally deficient. And this person has confidence, but this person is set on doing what is wrong. Then Proverbs says more about the obstinate fool. And this is a stringent one. Proverbs 26:11 says, as a dog returns to his vomit, so a fool, that's the word kesil, repeats his folly. And this fool is full of bragging, contentious, and finds pleasure in evil. And this person brings grief and even bitterness to his or her parents. And all these references, it's the same word, kesil. So this is not a question for someone to answer. This is a question for all of us to think about. But perhaps you know of instances or of groups or families that are dealing with people entrenched in a condition of obstinacy. They're not listening to anyone at all. I see some nods. So then there's I've heard it pronounced e-will. I believe in the Hebrew it's pronounced e-will. But this is a more deeply hardened fool. And a person named Wilson said the e-will shares many of the same marks of senseless and moral impropriety. And this fool rejects instruction, babbles thoughtlessly, is quick-tempered, and furthermore, the evil quarrels and rages. Coarse and hardened, this one will not be broken in this person's insolence. They mock at sin, and such acts of folly reveal ways that lack wisdom. Wow.
I have a question.
Yes.
So you're saying as we read Proverbs and they use the word fool, there's quite a few different fools
There's
that
different
we
fools.
don't know about because we don't know the Hebrew or
Yeah,
whatever.
that's what I'm telling you.
Yeah, yeah,
But I mean, you can relate. You
yeah,
don't have to remember all the words, but you see, it's kind of growing.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you see. And then there's a God-denying fool. But first I got to talk about the mocking fool. This fool sneers and derides others. This is a mocker, a scorner. The Hebrew word is letz and the plural is letzim. we need to be careful not to poke fun at what is good and what is holy. And I'm noticing that it's becoming fashionable in some kind of TV shows. People who mock others could be in very dangerous territory. And this individual ignites controversy, always wants to stir up, controversial question. You can't get through a conversation with others without that little dig, and insults other people. And Proverbs 3:34 says, God mocks proud mockers. But then there's the God-denying fool, and that word is Nabal. And the Nabal says in his heart, this is the one that says there is no God. God? Now, I want to come back to, I don't want us to jump that that's a God denying. There's some people that don't, they're simple ones that will ask, is there a God? And they'll even say there are people that they're close to, they'll say, do you believe in God? What do you think? And that's one thing, okay? But there gets to be a point where someone just constantly rejects all that's holy and they can deny God. I don't have the wisdom to discern the difference, but these types of people exist. So, but whoever corrects this scoffer, they'll win abuse, and whoever rebukes the wicked one can get hurt. Proverbs 27:22 in the New Revised Standard reads, crush evil in a mortar with pestle along with crushed grain, but the folly will not be driven out. Now, one can be well-meaning and try to intervene in the headstrong trajectory of a highly obstinate fools, but it is possible that in so doing, one could experience abuse. So again, my suggestion is that we pray for wisdom in specific relational contexts. People can come up with all kinds of things, but it takes a while to know where someone's coming from. What's the wisdom here? And sometimes it takes, when someone's got way completely off in left field, and there could be a number of different scenarios here. Sometimes it takes a group to deal with one obstinate fool. So then, somebody said something? No? Okay, so Proverbs 1:20-33 is the call of wisdom. And it says, wisdom cries out in the streets. In the squares, she raises her voice. At the busiest corner, she cries out. At the entrance of the city gates, she speaks. And she asks the rhetorical question, how long, O simple one? She's talking the petayim, the ones with the open mind. How long will you love being simple? And how long will you scoffers, you Letzim, delight in their scoffing? As fools, the Kesling hate knowledge. And so the Hebrew is actually addressing, in the very beginning of Proverbs, these different types of fools. So now I'm gonna ask someone if they would read, I'd like a woman actually, because it's a female voice here, Proverbs 1:20-33. Can someone volunteer to read for us? Okay, good, thank you very much. Now, what I want you to do a little bit, you're free to read it however you're going to read it. It's verses 20 here, call the wisdom down to verse 33, and just kind of call like you're, come listen to this. Yeah. Speaking like you're proclaiming it. Yeah, go ahead.
Wisdom cries out in the streets. In the square, she raises her voice. At the busiest corner, she cries out, and at the entrance of the sea gates, she speaks. How long, O simple ones, will you love being simple? How long will scoffers delight in their scoffing and fools hate knowledge? Give heed to my reproof. I will pour out my thoughts to you. I will make my words known to you, because I have called, and you refused. I've stretched out my hand, and no one has heeded. And because you have ignored all my counsel, and would not have none of my reproof, I also will laugh at your calamity. I will mock when panic strikes you. When panic strikes you like a storm, and your calamity comes like a whirlwind, when distress and anguish come upon you. Then they will call upon me, but I will not answer. They will seek me diligently, but will not find me, because they hated knowledge and did not choose the fear of the Lord, would have none of my counsel, and despised all my reproof. Therefore they shall eat the fruit of their way and be sated with their own devices. For waywardness kills the simple, and the complacency of fools destroys them. But those who listen to me will be secure and will live at ease without dread of disaster.
Oh, you captured it. Thank you. It just came to me this just came to me. Wisdom is going like this. And it sounds like these fools, some of them can go way too far. But I remember talking to a group of youth, and I said, as far as the east, is that the east? Yeah,
That's
as far as the east, thank you very much. As far as the east is from the west, okay? So far has he removed our sins from us as high as the heavens are from the earth. And I said, it's like a cross. God does not give up. God went to great lengths, but people can be very obstinate. So there's an open invitation from wisdom. And this is in Proverbs 9:1-6. And I say lady wisdom here because it's the imagery is feminine. Lady wisdom offers an invitation to the simple, the mockers, and the fools, again, in 9:1-6. And so it seems that the invitation to wisdom is always open, but some become too obdurate to be open. And it really takes, I think, a divine act to get people to come around. So there's much debate about this female image of wisdom, and one should note that wisdom is with Yahweh in the beginning of creation. And Proverbs 8:20 reads, the Lord, Yahweh, that whenever you see the Lord in capital letters like that, L-O-R-D, that's the Hebrew word Yahweh, that's a name for God. Yahweh created me at the beginning of his work. And then Proverbs 8:22-31 elaborates on this. And I'm gotta be conscious of my time, but the point is when you come to this, you might want to look it up. But wisdom's character is that she speaks in accordance with what is ethical, right, just, normal. There is nothing twisted or crooked about her words. And one of her main character traits is that she dwells with prudence. Proverbs 8:13 equates the fear of Yahweh with hating what is evil. And wisdom walks on a path of righteousness. Now, the word for create, because it said the Lord created me at the beginning of his works. The word create in Proverbs 8:22 is the same as that in Genesis 14:9. And this Hebrew word means acquire, but is used in the context of God originating the heavens and the earth. So Genesis 14:19 reads, blessed be Abram by God Most High, maker, that same root, idea to acquire, the maker of heaven and earth. So that, Nick, do you have a question?
Yeah, but you can finish your point, and then I do have a question.
Well, there's loads of questions. But I want to read one more explanation of creation wisdom, if I may, and then we'll go into that, okay? Just a
Yes.
second. This is another scholar, Andrew Dearman, and he says that the two speeches of personified wisdom in Proverbs 1:20-33 and 8:22-31 characterize wisdom as the self-witness of creation. And he drew this wording from another scholar named Von Rad. But proverbial wisdom regards creation. He said less is an absolute beginning, but more to human experience. Now, we can debate about whether this verse in Proverbs, and scholars do debate about whether this verse in Proverbs 8:22 is saying that wisdom is with God in creation, or whether wisdom is God, or whether wisdom is there's, and you have to go not just to Proverbs, but other wisdom literature. So this is something the scholars debating about the exact nature of this feminine figure. But what the book of Proverbs is doing in general is it's not talking about so much the absolute beginning of creation. It mentions this wisdom's with God in that work of creation. But what the book of Proverbs wants us to do is notice the ant, notice this, notice that, look at the order of things and draw wisdom inferences. Yes, Nick?
There's something bothers me about all this. There seems to be an implication that to have wisdom, you have to be of a certain age, a certain maturity, a certain level of emotional intelligence. And indeed, Plato said you couldn't be a philosopher king till you were in your 60s. And in the Bible, it says, when I was a child, I thought as a child. And, I didn't think as an adult until I was an adult. So there seems to be an implication that you've had to live some level of life, of certain experiences in order to really have wisdom, that it comes with age, maturity, and emotional intelligence.
If it does.
Also, yes,
Following, you're not done.
can you talk a little
You gotta
louder,
talk
please?
louder.
You're not done. I think it's a lifelong process of learning what is wisdom and how does it apply to me and my relationship with God.
I believe,
That's what I think.
okay,
You think?
Nick, and because I'm learning to talk to both worlds here, but I believe that it's possible for young people to indeed have wisdom.
Yeah.
And also, it's possible for older people to not have wisdom.
Yes.
So it's really, and I think the book of Proverbs pretty much agrees, but the book of Proverbs is talking about the youth. See, God wants us to have mentors. And your parents, they're like mentors. They guide us. And there's other people in our lives. You could probably think of some in your own life who have guided you or helped you in your life course or your life direction. Yes.
And I think I agree. Sometimes it's related to life experience. I've worked a lot with people with cancer, and I think of children with cancer, and they are filled with wisdom far beyond their years.
Oh, yes.
I mean, they it's phenomenal to listen to them,
Uh-huh.
and not necessarily age related at all.
Thank you. Yes, yes, yes. And so Yahweh is, but Yahweh is like thou, but then you, and Yahweh's established a relationship with what is made. So precisely in the world of daily experience and trial, proverbial wisdom claims a personal encounters with God. So Proverbs 2, 1-15 is an extended we're going to back is an extended exhortation about wisdom. I'm going to read it to you. If you accept my words, treasure up my commandments within you, making your ear attentive to wisdom and inclining your heart to understanding. If you indeed cry out for insight and raise your voice for understanding, if you seek for it as silver and search for it as hidden treasures, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. For the Lord gives wisdom. Yahweh gives wisdom, and from Yahweh's mouth comes knowledge and understanding. Yahweh stores up sound wisdom for the upright. Yahweh is a shield to those who walk blamelessly, guarding the paths of justice and preserving the way of his faithfulness. It doesn't mean that bad things will not happen to good people, but it's saying that as we entrust the Lord to guide us with wisdom, God's watching over us, protecting us, helping us through these situations in life, then you will understand righteousness and justice, equity, and every good path. That's a lot.
Yeah.
But for wisdom will come into your heart and knowledge will be pleasant to your soul. So the idea is it's beckoning. The book of Proverbs links God's sovereignty with wisdom and the created order. Nothing escapes Yahweh's divine sovereignty and power. And Estes points out that the book of Proverbs does not have a sacred secular dichotomy like we have. So I was going to have different class participants read this, but I want to share with you that I'm being sensitive for the time here. But 16:1, oh, let's go ahead. Someone read 16:1.
Okay. The plans of the mind belong to mortals, but the answer of the tongue is from the Lord.
Someone read 16:3.
Commit your work to the Lord and your plans will be established.
16:9. Who was starting to read?
The thing is right in my way. I'm sorry.
Oh,
The
man.
human mind plans the way, but the Lord directs the steps.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Okay. So what does this proverb mean? A person's heart plans his way, but the Lord determines the steps. Whoa. There's more to consider about Proverbs 16:19. I have it in different versions. The NIV reads, in his heart a man plans his course, but the Lord determines his steps. There's the word determine. The New Jerusalem Publication Society translates, a man may plot out his course, but it's the Lord who directs his course. And NRSV says the human mind plans the way, but the Lord directs the steps. And so the image opposite is like someone trying to choose life direction. God's in that. So Proverbs, and this is what I want us to get, Proverbs as wisdom literature does not deny the human's plan and free will. We're not automatons over here. But God is with us. God is leading and guiding us. We make our plans, we have free will, but God's also free to act. And there's a mysterious element here that humans cannot control. In his heart, a man plans his course, but the Lord determines the steps. All of a man's ways seem right to him, but the Lord weighs the heart. No wisdom, no understanding, no counsel can prevail against the Lord, against Yahweh. All the ways of a person seem right, but the Lord probes the heart. Again, this is God who cares about our inmost thoughts. Now, the Bible, especially the Old Testament, talks about there's consequences to the way one takes, and there's many verses. I have the verse in Psalm 1 and in these verses in Proverbs talking about the way of the righteous, the way of the wicked. But the idea is, I don't want to just like broad categories, but the idea is that we should make choices about our life direction, and there are consequences to these decisions. So the paths of life are that, and I've written, it has not been conclusively proven, but it has been strongly inferred that there were people that were recognized as sages, people with wisdom in the Israelite culture, and they'd actually go to the wise ones. So the sages believed that the divine order was written into the very nature of things, which is an idea that we don't really have so much, but other cultures do. And also, this was the idea that you could look at the natural realm and gain wisdom about it, life. And some of the proverbs are drawn from observations of actual life. And a theologian named Thomas Aquinas got into this. So there's two paths of life, though, basically. There's a path of wisdom, which leads us to more life. And then there's a path of folly, and its end is death life. So that there are consequences to the way one takes. So then a scholar named John Boldingay said something, and I'm reading this tome. Look at this thing. That's volume 2. This is page 584 to 585. And he said that the concept of traveling on a path, they talk about, it says, give careful thought to the paths of your feet and be steadfast in all your ways, Proverbs 4:26. John Goldingay points out that the concept of traveling on a path is different from our Western concept of a journey. I thought, oh my goodness, this is called journey class.
Yeah.
But he said that journey is not about an individual finding one's life course. In Proverbs, one is on a path that others are also taking, and it is either a good path or a treacherous one. That's a lot to think about. So the way of the righteous, and this is in Proverbs 4:18, the path of the righteous is like the morning sun, shining ever brighter the full light of day. And this proverb associates the way one is taking with the righteous way with light. And it's a path that increases in light as the righteous continue to move along that way. And there is another way that is characterized by those whose horse is folly. So I want to touch on the fear of the Yahweh. This is another huge idea in Proverbs. But the fear of Yahweh basically means reverence for Yahweh. And that can lead, our reverence for God can lead us toward right behavior. And irreverence for God can lead to folly and disorder. So Proverbs 9:10, I've got the New International Version, says, the fear of Yahweh is the beginning of wisdom, and knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. So Proverbs upholds this Yahweh. And Proverbs, Yahweh created everything, and humans should have reverence. We talk about having reverence for creation, the water, or what have you, in our world. But we also need to have reverence for God. Proverbs upholds Yahweh. Yahweh created everything, and humans should have reverence for Yahweh. And this is what? The beginning of wisdom. So wisdom's way deep. And Proverbs contrasts those who fear God with those who are foolish. And I found this, road sign this way and that way. It's kind of what they're saying. You're either walking along this way and it's getting brighter, or you're going this way and things are getting deeper. But the fear of the Lord is the beginning of this knowledge. And the meaning of the fear of the Lord in Proverbs, and this is from a scholar named Anderson, and my subtitle is, what is the fear of the Yahweh anyway? What is it? And that was a question that was asked last week. Remember that Lord means Yahweh in Hebrew. So the fear of Yahweh is the beginning of wisdom. In your Bibles, it might say the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. The idea is the fear of Yahweh is the beginning of wisdom. And wisdom movement, this scholar said, wisdom movement developed as a distinctly Israelite accent, as evident in the proverb that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. So wisdom is not just the ability to observe and assess life in all its varied complexity. It is not just the ability to assimilate the wisdom of the sages. In our culture, we think that we put more and more knowledge and things in there that are good. But it's not just the ability to assimilate the wisdom. It's based on the reverence of Yahweh. And Anderson further remarks that the beginning of wisdom, that is the foundation of wisdom, is faith. Faith in Yahweh, the God who is worshipped in Israel. The fear of the Lord is cursed 12 times in Proverbs. So what is the fear of the Lord anyway? Wisdom requires the fear of Yahweh. It requires faith in Yahweh. And Yahweh looks for reverence as the beginning of wisdom. And a scholar named Lucas points out that the fear of Yahweh includes being loyal to Yahweh, loving Yahweh, obeying Yahweh's commandments. So the fear of the Lord is reverence. It's being loyal. It's loving Yahweh. And for Proverbs, there's the implication is also obeying the commandments or obeying the instruction you were brought up on. So our relationship to Yahweh is related to our conduct in life. And that indicates that this is a relationship and there should be integrally related. And Lucas comments that for the sages, the fear of Yahweh had both an inward aspect of one's relationship to Yahweh and an outward aspect about our conduct in life. So that the knowledge of human frailty and divine strength is endemic, inherent to the fear of the Lord. Here's Proverbs 3:4-5. I want to ask something. Can you read it for us?
Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he shall direct your path.
In other words, we're not automatons. God's guiding us, but we're also making decisions and acting and gaining, growing in wisdom. So the challenge question to right now is, what is trust? Ideas, trust? What's trust?
It's like walking ahead when you don't know where you're going, but you believe that you're on the right path because God somehow lets you know he's with you and he's coming
And
along.
you're asking,
And you just,
okay, so
I think.
yeah, I wrote this. I wasn't looking for the sterling answer, but good thing, very good thinking. So in Hebrew thinking, knowing someone entails being in a relationship with what one knows. This leads to trust. It's a relationship. So trust in Yahweh entails letting Yahweh guide you through the maze of life, exactly what you're saying. So my advice is this: read the book. And prayerfully read the book and prayerfully go into this maze called life, trusting in God, asking for the wisdom, ask, seek, and knock, and may God bless us all. Thank you. Yes.
I think tying this together with Leah's sermon is that we're on this path together.
We're together, yes. Yes.
Let's not
yes.
forget that. We're not individually going after them.
No, yes, we're not. Very good. So together also, we're doing this, and it's its own witness.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to say something.